Welcome back, everyone, to the Burnout Club. This is the place where we explore burnout and success one expert and experiment at a time. I'm your host, Patrice, and today I'm joined by Dr. Kate Lund. Dr. Kate, welcome.
Thank you, Patrice. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So this is about 1 year in the making, everyone. I met Dr. Kate at PodCon last year when I was first starting out, and she is a wealth of information and a clinical psychologist. So she is the perfect person to walk us through how to actually be a bit more resilient. And she has great content on dealing with burnout. So I can't wait to dive in. Why don't you just give us a little bit about what led you to enter psychology and what brought you to this moment now?
Sure, absolutely. So let's see. Psychology, my path into psychology was a long one, to be honest, because I think it goes way back to when I was a child, diagnosed with a medical condition called hydrocephalus, and kind of lived with that throughout my childhood, still to this day, actually. But in my childhood, it was very challenging. Hydrocephalus is when the cerebral spinal fluid doesn't circulate as it should, causing
Oh,
pressure to build up on the brain. And the good news is it can be managed with something called a shunt. Bad
mm,
news is shunts break. So
okay.
lots of time in and out of the hospital as a kid, needing to bounce back, showing up at school with half a head of shaved hair, and giant
Yeah,
glasses. And, it was tough. And so I think those early experiences really were pretty formative in what I was interested in studying in school,
mhm,
where my focuses were on understanding people, understanding how we as people overcome challenges. And so the rest is really history. I focused on, as much psychology as I could, even back in high school, studied it in
great.
college, graduated, did a stint in marketing and PR for 4
Ah,
years because I wasn't ready to go back to grad school, but a lot
yeah.
of interpersonal stuff there as well.
Hmm.
And then became a licensed clinical psychologist, got a doctorate, and here I am. And I think, those early experiences definitely led me to this point, but they're certainly not like all of what, the experience has been.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I find that something always ties back to childhood when you're looking in the rearview mirror, at least. So, yeah, I'm right with you. Now, when you are thinking about your practice today, what is your focus? What are you most excited to talk about?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And so my practice has been quite eclectic over time, but in the here and now, my focus is really on helping people to build resilience and thrive within their own unique context.
Mm,
And that piece
perfect.
is really important because we're all coming from different contexts.
Yeah.
And we want to, one thing I try to help folks do is gain an awareness of what is their context? Where do they want to go within that context? And how do we help them get there? And a big piece of that is the resilience focus.
I see. Okay. And then, so for people at home, what questions should they be asking themselves? Like, let's say, they're not in the room with you. Is there something they can do to start with trying to understand their context?
That's a really good question. And we always take a strengths-based approach.
Mm,
What are your strengths? What are you good at as you show up
mm,
in the world? Where are your relative challenges? Because we all have them, right? And
yeah.
trying to use those strengths, which often are derived from, areas of strong interest, areas of passion, that sort of thing. How are you going to be able to use those strengths to perhaps compensate for your relative challenges
Yeah.
and move forward from there? And also, I guess one tip for, just kind of thinking about this is try your best, and this is easier said than done, to
Mm,
not compare yourself with other people.
yeah.
Very, very hard with social media, all the messages, all the things that we're hearing, but really important to work to maximize your own potential within your context. Who are you? Doesn't mean you can't grow,
Yeah.
develop that context, but it's that comparison piece that can really bog you down.
I love that when I asked you that question, the first response was something positive to focus on your strengths and start there. So I think if you're anchoring in that, the process is much more enjoyable. And it almost gives you a break of being hypercritical and optimizing from a place of, not doing enough or having enough or really like I need to acquire these skills versus like, these are my strengths and this is what I'm going to layer on top of it and how I'm going to use those strengths. I like that framing a lot. So you know what you're doing, Dr. K. That's great. Now, the other reason why I really was excited to talk to you is because you have so much knowledge around really exploring this conversation in the context of children. So, I have 2 kids, and you even have a book out, Step Away: The Keys to Resilient Parenting. Immediately, my alarm bells are going off. I need that. So, talk a little bit about what prompted you to write the book and what we might find in there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm really excited about the book, and it's just recently released, and so super fun project. And the book, is written through 3 lenses. My lens as a child struggling with the medical situation and how my parents had to, be resilient in those moments, and then how that helped me. And then that's sort of mentioned at the beginning, and then really focuses in on my life as a parent, as a mom, the trajectory of the 18 years so far that I've been a mom, and how at the very beginning of my journey, I was thinking, wow, I can, do it all. I can have my robust career. I can,
Yeah.
be the fitness buff that I am, and I can be an awesome mom all at the same time. And
Yeah.
little did I know that when my husband was traveling 6 days a week when the boys were infants,
Oh,
that was going to be a little harder than I had anticipated.
yeah.
So my focus on how can I be as strong, resilient as possible within this context of new momhood, wanting to be a professional, wanting to be an athlete still, all these things. How can I
Yeah.
do that? So it's written through that lens, lots of examples. And then it's written through my lens as a clinical psychologist for the past 20 plus years, where, of course, I've worked with so many people
Yeah.
who have been struggling with things that have held them back from being, at their best, from held them back from being as resilient as possible. So we bring those 3 lenses together
Yeah.
through, research, case studies, and my own personal examples. And so that's really what the book is and what it's bringing to the table. Offers many practical tools and strategies for us to start building that resilience within our own unique context. First and foremost strategy is, how do we manage our stress response? How do we start the day from a nice, even place, such that
Yes.
we're not starting up here and then
Yeah.
the stressor hits, boom, we escalate to the point of shutdown. And then what
Yeah.
happens? We shut down. And it's hard to do much of anything. Or maybe we burn out.
Yes.
So that piece, how do we manage or modulate our stress response as parents, as people, in whatever our context is vital.
Okay. So that's step 1. So, and you can answer this either from the lens of yourself as the mom who's trying to do it, or more holistically as the author of the book. But what are the either the major shifts that you need to make in order to create that sort of a better baseline, or surprising lessons or tricks to make that happen?
Yes, that's a great question. And so, the strategy that I teach folks, most everybody right out of the gate, is something called the relaxation response. And that is a strategy, a tool developed by a physician in Boston back in the 1970s, before the practice of mindfulness was really a thing.
Oh,
And
okay.
it became huge, really well researched, empirically and otherwise. And it's the cornerstone of the mind body medicine program at Mass General Hospital in this day.
Great.
And so what it does is, it's super simple. You pick a word or a phrase you find soothing in some way,
Hmm.
and you breathe. Not doing anything, unusual with your breathing. You really are using that word or that phrase as a placeholder, and you breathe. And you practice 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes later in the day, kind of bookending the day. And as you do that over time, you start to internalize or integrate what it feels like to be in that level space. What does that stress modulated space feel like? And then you can either, increase the time of practice, or you can start putting it in small practice sessions throughout the day. Find it really effective. Like if you're going into a meeting that you're perceiving as very high intensity, stressful, I use this technique a lot with the young athletes that I work with who might be facing some sort of performance block, stressed about a game, kind of to ground themselves before moving into that situation. Really effective also prior to a test or something perceived as stressful in the classroom. So that's my go-to, but we can do it in lots of different ways. We can start to modulate our stress response also through visualization, through, time outside, exercise, that sort of thing. So there are ways to do it, but I find that having a really integrated mindfulness practice is really important.
So I always ask for a challenge, and that was the challenge that you set. So for all of you listeners, this is what you need to do. So at some point this week, start it, try it out. And you were saying do it 2 times a day for a month, right? And see what happens. And the relaxation response, and it's just normal breathing. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
Normal breathing. And you're just
Simple.
really just using that word or that phrase as a placeholder, sort of clear your mind. And you will start to think about the things that are coming into your mind, but just don't engage, don't get too distracted, just kind of be, and you'll be surprised at what happens over time.
Yeah. I think some of the best things are just shockingly simple, and that's what we need, honestly, when we're overwhelmed and when we don't have a ton of time. Everyone's going to be breathing for those 5 minutes in the morning, no matter what, right? You're not box, but you're not doing anything special. You will be breathing. So pick a calming word and just try it out. I can do that. No problem. That might be the easiest suggestion that I've gotten throughout this whole podcast. So it's worth a try.
They rate ease. We want simplicity so that we're not bogging ourselves down even more, right? So that's perfect. I can't wait to hear how that experience is for you, Patrice.
Yeah. And I'll see if I can get my kids to do it. Because it's so simple for them. What's the reception from, like you said, you work with younger athletes? Like, how do they typically respond when you say, hey, why don't you try this?
Yeah, it's been quite positive. The athletes that I'm working with right now are pretty driven, pretty high level in terms of what their goals are and kind of their baseline. So they're integrating these tools pretty readily. So the response has been really good. If somebody's a little bit more kind of on the other end of that continuum, they're there because they feel like they have to be there or something like that. They might not pick up on it as readily. So you really have to be in the moment of wanting to make these positive shifts and improve your performance, your well-being, your overarching resilience. So that's what I'd say, but there is a continuum of how people engage. But right now, it's very, very solid.
Okay, that's fair. And then what is actually happening in your body and in your brain when this is occurring? Like, how does it create the resilience? Is it really that you can cognitively think about, well, I felt calm earlier today, and this is how I want to feel right now when there's a tense situation either coming up or happening? Or is it changing something in your brain or how you're working?
Yeah, it's actually modulating your nervous system. It's calming your nervous system, right? And so you're learning, you're integrating what it feels like to have a calmer nervous system in those moments of high intensity.
Yeah.
And as you integrate that feeling, then becomes easier over time to call up when you need it. So we're really modulating the nervous system, and we're kind of
Yeah.
engaging that calming effect as we do that.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense to me. Because if you start your day with cortisol spikes and stress, right, you're doing the opposite, and your body kind of responds in that stressful way much more easily than, and this is just the flip of that. So, okay.
Exactly. And your mind responds as well. And then
Yeah.
and then you end up in a spot where you're sort of walking through mud backwards, and it's just really hard to delineate what's what at that point.
I love that visual. Yeah, that is me sometimes in this journey of parenthood.
Trust me, it's me too, right? It's the same
Yeah.
thing. And
Mhm.
it's kind of funny in that, I try to live these principles, as best I can. But,
Yeah.
sometimes there are points where I go off track. And so, there are moments in writing the book where perhaps I didn't feel like the most resilient parent out there either.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's all been a good reminder for me, this whole process.
Yeah. Was there any part or part of this process where you felt like you made a discovery or made a connection that was new while you were setting out to write the book?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I think that it's not like a brand new connection,
Mhm.
but I think the process, the talking with folks and the bringing together the case examples and all that, I think that it was a great reminder that there's no one size fits all in any of this. So the book, that's one thing that we really, I hope that folks will take away from the book, is that there's no one size fits all.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm trying to do in the book is lay that out, lay out options, lay out strategies, tools that you can integrate in a way that works for you.
Mhm.
Also, a big piece of the book is kind of cultivating that self-awareness. So what are the things that are going to work for you?
Mhm.
So I guess that certainly wasn't a new discovery, but it was certainly reinforced for me as I was writing, as I went out there and I've been talking about it. And
Mhm.
also, again, not a new discovery, but reinforced the fact that there are no shortcuts in any of this. There's no magic button that we're going to push. I wish there was.
Yeah.
But the fact is, integration and practice over time is just vital.
Mhm. It's good to hear both of those things because it is difficult, and that's why it feels difficult, right? Because there are no shortcuts. So, don't beat yourself up about not being perfect all the time. And then the it's not one size fits all. I can definitely see that. I think it brings up another question for me in as children are so different as they're growing up, right? They have all of these very different stages. And what I'm trying to navigate is like, do I need to change all of my strategies for myself to pair with the stages? Or are these really, it seems like the tool you just gave us, I could just use that throughout. So, like, I'm putting the practice in and I learn that, and then I can just keep doing that until, until they're 50 years old. Uh, is that the same with the other strategies that you explore? Or are some really meant for, the early year, like the toddlers or the teenage years? How should I think about that kind of age framing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And really, what we want to be doing is kind of adapting how we're modeling, or understanding that kids are going to pick up on things in different ways across developmental
Mhm.
periods.
Okay.
But really, you're modeling throughout. And you know for the relaxation response, you can really you know directly show, teach, help your youngest integrate that early on.
Mhm.
Some of the other strategies, it's going to be dependent on their developmental phase, how they're going to pick up on things. But
Mhm.
really, you don't need to be changing. You just need to be practicing in a way that works for you to
Uh-huh.
build your resilience, and that will allow you to see what's going to work best for your child in a given developmental phase. The other
Hmm.
piece that's really, really important is this sense of connecting in an authentic way with your child, and
Yeah.
allowing them to see that you're going to have challenges, things are going to be hard, you're not this perfect person, because you want them in a developmentally appropriate way along the you know way here, to
Yeah.
understand that it's okay to fail, it's okay to not
Hmm.
succeed the first time out of the gate, and then have you as a model, how
Yeah.
you've circumvented. You're not going to, bog your kid down with all your challenges, but is there a developmentally appropriate way to give them a snippet of, oh, when
Hmm.
I was in school, that was hard for me too, or, something along those lines, so
Yeah.
that you can have that conversation in a way that fits your child in terms of where they are. So
Yes.
that's what I would say about that. You're kind of staying steady in what you're doing as a parent in terms of building these, but then there are going to
Hmm.
be different presentations for your child depending on where they are developmentally.
Yeah. I think that makes me feel a little bit better just because it is. I spend a decent amount of time trying to acquire skills and knowledge about how to be the best parent. And, I think if you're maybe not chasing so many new techniques directly with the kids and really just harnessing all that I can do myself and be the best model, I think that's a good use of my time, just because you have access to every bit of information in the world, right? So if you're like, oh, okay, let me teach my kid, how to do this strategy, but like maybe I should learn it first and model it first. And and like that's how I roll things out instead of starting with the kid. So that's it's
Absolutely. And
yeah.
the key there too is, right, our kids pick up on our emotional state, right? Even if we're not
Hmm.
saying anything, if we're
Yeah.
heightened, they're going to pick up on that. So
Yes.
if we can really be working with ourselves to keep our, and it's not always going to happen, right? But to
Yeah.
keep ourselves as level as possible, our stress response as modulated as possible, it's going to help all of this become that much more effective.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just thinking about episode this morning where my younger one, she's very angry. Something about lunch, what was packed or not packed. I think the turkey went bad. I don't know, but it's her comment to me. She's like, "Stop trying to make this a calm moment." I'm like, that's my job, Like, if that's her worst feedback for me, then I think we're on the right track.
Yeah,
I have to.
that's awesome. That's hysterical. I can picture that kind of a moment for sure.
Yeah. So okay, this is very helpful for me. So just to sometimes pick what you're going to work on, and then I don't have to make constant decisions all the time. So I will be checking out your book, and I've already ordered it. By the way, amazing reviews already, 4.9 on Amazon. So congrats on that. I believe you're changing lives. Yeah. Now, was there anything else that you can share from the book? So maybe one of the case studies or a window for the listeners here to see, how this impacts the life of a family or parent.
Right, absolutely. That's a great question. And so one of the case studies that I love to share is a client that I worked with for several years, and she came in just burned out, anxiety, depression, sort of clinical signs, but was still functioning very, very well.
Yeah.
Had been a serious athlete earlier in her life, and had just kind of lost sight of that with, life, kids,
Yeah.
marriage, job, just all of it, right?
Hmm.
And really wanted to get back to finding herself as that athlete, had been competing at a very high level
Yeah.
in a sport, and
Hmm.
really wanted to get back to that point. But really, when she came in, did not believe it was possible. Just did
Yeah.
not. Just it was too much. It felt like too much. And
Yeah.
the reality just felt too far out of bounds. And so one of
Hmm.
my goals is always to help folks hold on to the possibility on the other side of the challenges that they're facing in the here and now. And
Yeah.
so, we worked through, started with helping her to modulate her stress response so that she would start the days a bit more level. She
Mm-hmm.
also mentioned that her kids were struggling on various points and identity related things and some other things. And
Mm-hmm.
so helping her to become more modulated in those moments. Um, Over time, that generalized out to the family. She taught her kids the relaxation response. That was really, really
Ah,
helpful.
yeah.
And as she started to feel more modulated, we were able to put in more tools and strategies. We were able to help her to engage in, you know, find and engage in a hobby that really brought her joy in the
Mm.
moment. Create space for social connection,
Mm-hmm.
fit into her life. And so as, she was building her sense of self up, she was
Yeah.
starting to reclaim that sense of possibility on the other side of where she was.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward a couple years and back in the sport, back at a high level, has sort of transformed her own experience, but sort of through kind of generalization within the family system has almost transformed the entire experience of the family. And so that's
Wow.
one example that I love to share because it was a very positive outcome and really is at the core of, what I want to help people to do to feel better about
Mm-hmm.
where they are in time and space and to really be able to grasp onto and live that possibility on the other side of whatever challenge they're facing.
That is a great example. I think because it shows a clear pathway for this is how it happens. Because the starting point seems so simple. You're almost like, okay, well, like I'm going to have to, do so much more to actually reach my goals. But it seems like it's really that building block. So to go from the modulation, I'm using that the hand symbol that you're using as well. I like that too. Um, and then build back your sense of self because I had to do that myself too, right? Like the connections to to society. And as a mom, I had just like poured everything to my kids and my career. How do you re-engage with the community? And even I had a conversation with my older daughter this weekend. She was walking to her soccer game, and I just said, "Do you think mommy will ever be athletic again?" She's like, "I don't know." Right? It's like, that's fair. I don't know either. Right? um, and in my heart, I want to, but I think I am much more like your client in that somewhere inside my mind, I had made the decision like I don't think that can ever happen again. So maybe it can. Despite the injuries, maybe it can.
I bet that it can, right? And to
Yeah,
remember taking it one step at a time and
yeah,
just, holding on to that possibility that it can become a reality given
yeah.
time and space.
Powerful. My goodness. So you know, I love that you chose to share all of this in a book with everyone because there's so much that we can gain from these experiences. Were there any other experiences you had on the personal front, like your personal journey that you think are helpful for anyone to learn about?
Yeah, well, I guess, what I would say is, going way back, some of the early lessons that I learned about, the my own experience of having to really stay within my context and
Mhm.
know that, because I had the medical stuff and it kind of impacted some of the things that I was able to do and, falling behind in school and all of that. So I learned
Mhm.
some really important lessons there in terms of, you know, maximizing my potential within my own unique context without comparing myself to others. I think that was a big lesson that I learned. And
Yeah.
then moving forward into parenthood, same thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, Really just being the best that I could be for
Mhm.
my boys, particularly early on when my husband was off on the road 6 days a week and it was a little nutty.
Ooh.
Um, just kind of finding strategies that worked for us without
Hmm.
worrying about what other people were doing. Easier said than done, because we always want to have, I would have loved to have been that like uber athletic mom who was probably about 15 years younger than me in that moment with her young
Yeah.
kids and all these things, doing the marathons. But
Hmm.
that just in those early years of motherhood just wasn't where I was, right? And
Yeah.
so I had to be okay with that and find strategies and tools really that worked to build
Hmm.
as solid a foundation as possible. And so I've tried to carry that forward, and then recognizing that strategies need to shift a little bit as your kids get older, and we're in a brand new phase now of college applications for one of them, which is a
Oh, yeah.
whole new terrain.
Yeah.
So I have no clear answers there yet, but we're working it out. And
Yeah, that seems daunting.
just like ebbing and flowing, and doing the
Hmm.
best that you can
Yeah.
in the moment, and
Hmm.
recognizing that that's what you've got to give.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the context, like the word you're saying, right? Judge yourself on that, like your capacity to do and give. I'm going to remember that, right? I'm gonna write that down. you know, I always like to ask, what do you do to really enjoy yourself? Like what are you doing to have fun? Like I want to have more fun, and I like to ask people for ideas. So what do you have on your plate there that's fun?
Wow, so that is such a great question, because I'm trying to, and along with my husband, we're trying to inject more fun into
Yes,
our
same.
life as we speak. We are actually trying to do that. It's not always easy, right?
Yeah,
But for me personally, jumping on the Peloton, I find that fun. I like it,
yeah,
it's good for my mind and my stress
yeah.
response, but I love it. I find it fun.
Hmm.
Um, I've been trying to meet more with friends for lunch on days where I have that
Mm,
window of time,
yeah,
and that's one way that I've been trying to have that fun. And my husband and I have been trying to do that in the evenings with other couples, that sort of thing. But
yeah.
yeah, it feels like there's got to be a little bit more, and so we're
Hmm.
working on that. We're working on that. But moments
Yeah,
of levity are really important to interject, and I feel like for us, it's a bit of an evolving process.
yeah. It's also comforting to hear you say that, right? Like, oh no, everyone doesn't have it all figured out, right?
Oh,
So,
no, and
right.
I am the first to admit, no, I do not have it all figured out, and it's a work in process.
Yeah. But even, you know, your answer just sparked something in my mind, right? The lunchtime hour, that could be a powerful use of time. Why not just one lunch in a weekend and or during the week, let's say, and it doesn't have to be long. And maybe it's not apps, main course, and dessert, right? But something, and then see someone you haven't seen in a while. So versus just stacking it all with business meetings, it's a good reminder. And,
Exactly.
changing the time of day. Yeah, why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, or it could be a phone call or what have you. But
Mm,
I've in the past 2 weeks had two really fun lunches, and it's been great. It brings you to a different spot where you might be feeling kind of like bogged down by the stressors of day to day, because we're all
yeah.
facing numerous stressors throughout each and every day. And so to kind of
Hmm.
move out of that space for a lunch, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah. Oh, so we snuck in challenge number two. Either have it. You can have a lunch with someone and make it quick in person, or if you were sitting having lunch, at your home office or at your desk, you can have a phone call with someone you haven't heard in a while, right? Just arrange it and just catch up for, 15, 20 minutes. And that'll probably still leave you with that positive feeling afterwards, even if you can't make something happen in person. So, okay. Challenge number two
100%. Yeah.
accepted, Dr. Kate.
Cool. Cool.
Oh, well, this is great. Is there anything else you want the listeners to take away after they're done with this episode?
Just that sense that there's no one size fits all, and
Mhm.
there's room to play around with what works best for you in terms of helping you build resilience, thrive within your own unique context. And I
Mm.
always like to remind people to never lose sight of the possibility on the other side of the
Yeah.
challenges that we're inevitably going to face.
Yeah. Yes. I like that. Because you will face challenges. That is guaranteed. There will be more, right? But promise yourself that you're going to think about what's on the other side. Easier said than done, but we need a reminder, and you brought it to us. Thank you. All right. And then how can people work with you going forward? Like they could absolutely buy the book, right? Step Away, The Keys to Resilient Parenting. Are there any other ways that you'd like to interact with the audience?
Through my website, which is www.katelundspeaks.com. And I'm also quite active on LinkedIn, and they can also find me on Instagram. But any of those ways are
Awesome.
great ways to reach out. And then, of course, my book is available through my website as well as on Amazon.
I love it. Great. Thank you, Dr. Kate. This has been fantastic. We really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much, Patrice, for having me. I've loved this.
Yeah. All right, listeners, make sure you leave some comments and rate and subscribe. Watch on YouTube or listen via audio. And have a great week. Bye.